You were born into a contract you never signed, yet it controls everything you do. The way you dress, the opinions you hold, even the words you use. No one asked you if you agreed to it, but from the moment you took your first breath, you've been bound by a silent contract, an invisible set of rules that dictate how you live. An unspoken agreement so deeply woven into your life, you stopped noticing it long ago. This isn't just a theory. It's a force so powerful that it shapes your reality without you ever realizing it. It doesn't use chains. It doesn't need prison bars. It controls with something far more powerful: expectation, conformity, fear. Every thought, every habit, every belief you hold dear may not be your own. You wake up, you go to work, you follow the rules, not because you chose to, but because the system taught you not to question them. And so you march, one step after another, inside a structure designed to keep you obedient, not just through laws, but through language, culture, identity. They call it society. But underneath the rituals and routines lies something far more sinister: the silent agreement, a social contract written in whispers, passed from generation to generation, never debated, never voted on, but enforced all the same. So ask yourself, who wrote these rules? Who benefits from your obedience? And more importantly, what happens if you break them? Because if every part of your life has been conditioned, if your thoughts are shaped before you think them, if your choices were made for you long before you could choose, are you truly free? Or just another willing participant in a system designed to control you from the inside out? Before laws, before kings, before nations, there were only people, scattered, unprotected, driven by instinct, fighting to survive in a world ruled not by justice, but by force. No written rules, no morality, only power. But even inside that primal chaos, something ancient stirred. A fragile understanding emerged. Don't kill me, and I won't kill you. You share food. I share protection. It was the earliest version of what we now call a social contract, an invisible mutual agreement born not out of virtue, but survival. Over time, that survival pact became something more, not just life and death, but order, ritual, norms. We began shaking hands to show we weren't armed. We waited in lines to prevent conflict. We lowered our voices in sacred places. We made eye contact to show respect or submission. Little things, unwritten rules, but powerful ones. As tribes became towns and towns became cities, trust became complex. Power didn't always come from strength, but from structure. The strong took more. The weak were told it was fair. The silent contract, it began to split. People needed something bigger, a higher power, a system to prevent collapse. And so we invented the social contract, not to give us freedom, but to protect us from each other. Then came 3 men, 3 visions, 3 blueprints for control. Thomas Hobbes saw humanity as a beast, violent, impulsive, ruled by fear. To Hobbes, only absolute authority could tame the chaos. A leviathan, one ruler with unchecked power. In exchange, we would offer our obedience, control, bought with safety. Jean-Jacques Rousseau took a different path. To him, true liberty wasn't found in resistance or submission. It was found in surrender, not to a king, not to a tyrant, but to something greater, the general will. To live not as scattered individuals, but as one collective body, one vision, one voice. But here's the question no one dares to ask. If the social contract was meant to protect us, why do so many of us still feel trapped? Imagine a world with no rules, no police, no government, just you and the chaos. No one to call, no one to trust, only survival. Food, power, shelter, all taken by force. This was the world Thomas Hobbes feared, a world where life would be solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. So we made a choice, a deep, often unconscious one. We surrendered. We gave up our wild freedom in exchange for order, a passport, a driver's license, a national ID. These aren't just documents. They are modern contracts, proof that we agree to be tracked, categorized, and allowed to move within limits. But control has a price, and the currency, fear. Fear keeps you obedient. Fear of death makes you obey laws. Fear of rejection makes you mimic the crowd. Fear of losing your job makes you stay silent, even when you know something's wrong. Fear is the most efficient chain ever built. Today they call it national security. They call it surveillance. They call it protection. But ask yourself this: is it really safety? Or is it submission wearing a smile? Hobbes believed the contract was necessary, that without it, we would destroy each other. But if we've given up so much freedom, why does it still feel like we're at war with ourselves? What if I told you, power was never meant to belong to kings. It was meant to belong to you. There was a time, brief, fragile, when that idea was revolutionary, when a man stood up and said, "Governments are not our masters, they are our servants." His name was John Locke, and his vision was simple yet radical. A contract, not written in blood, but in principle. An agreement between the people and those who claim to govern them. Governments were to protect three sacred rights: life, liberty, property. But Locke added a warning: if the government fails that duty, the people must rise, not as rebels, but as restorers of balance. Rebellion isn't treason, it's responsibility. But today, that idea feels distant. We are told, you have a voice, you have a choice, your vote matters. But do we? We line up at polling stations like we line up for coffee. 2 options, sometimes 3, pre-approved, packaged, predictable, different colors, same ingredients, and even that act, voting, is part of a modern contract. You vote, you accept the outcome. But what if the outcome was always designed? Media tells us who to fear. Corporations shape the laws behind closed doors. Money buys the loudest voices, and we, the people, are handed a megaphone with no battery. Locke's vision was hopeful, a world where people shape power. But in reality, most power is now shaped for us. Freedom becomes a checkbox. Democracy becomes theater. We are still part of a contract, but it's written in fine print, signed without our full understanding. And when the contract is broken, do we revolt or do we scroll? We're told we have freedom, but we're also taught exactly how far to push it before it becomes trouble. Every institution, every system gives us just enough room to feel independent, but not enough to truly be it. I remember sitting in history class, asking why dissent was brave in the past, but disruptive now. The silence from the room said more than the teacher ever could. That's when I learned the first rule of the social contract. Don't question the contract itself. Once the social contract was clear, a ruler governed, a citizen obeyed, a trade of freedom for order. But something changed. Now, the rulers are invisible, the contract unwritten, and the control far more sophisticated. It's no longer just kings and governments. It's algorithms, corporations, the silent architects of your desire. Every click you make, every scroll, every search, every purchase, tracked, recorded, analyzed, not to protect you, but to predict you. And the most dangerous part, you agree to it. Not through coercion, not at gunpoint, but through convenience. You accepted the terms. You downloaded the app. You tapped "I agree" without reading the fine print. And in that tap, You surrendered a piece of yourself. Now, big tech decides what you see, what you think, what you crave. You think you're exploring, but you're being guided. You think you're connecting, but you're performing. Likes, shares, notifications, they're not rewards. They're reinforcements. Pavlov's bell in your pocket. Step outside the algorithm, and you vanish. Call it engagement, call it choice, but it's not freedom. It's a new kind of obedience, coded in dopamine. We're still bound by a social contract, but the rulers wear no crowns, and the chains are psychological. We're told we're free because we get to pick our wallpaper, choose our brand, vote for pre-selected options. But are we really choosing, or are we just following? If we're still part of an ancient contract, just rewritten by new hands, then the question is no longer, what is freedom? The question is, can it still be broken? But as we surrendered power, we gave up something deeper. Not just control of systems, but control of the self. We gave up the ability to question, to resist, to choose something wild, unpredictable, unknown. And in exchange, we got comfort, structure, certainty wrapped in obedience, a cage with soft walls. Each thinker, Hobbes, Locke, Rousseau, offered a way to tame the chaos, a way to make life livable. But hidden in all their blueprints was the same silent admission. You are not free by default. You are conditioned, shaped, domesticated. Freedom was never the foundation. It was the illusion. And that's the question no one dares to ask. If your freedom depends on staying inside their rules, was it ever yours to begin with? Voltaire warned us long ago. It is dangerous to be right when the authorities are wrong. So we stopped trying. We chose silence over risk, conformity over friction, safety over truth. Karl Marx saw how the system twisted freedom into labor. We trade our time for survival, our dreams for wages, our autonomy for dependence on powers we'll never meet. To Marx, the social contract wasn't a pact between equals. It was a deal between the owners and the owned. Emma Goldman refused that deal entirely. She believed true liberty could never be granted, only seized, not in a ballot box, not in a courtroom, but in the radical act of thinking for yourself. Michel Foucault took it further. He showed us how power no longer hides in thrones or courtrooms, but in data, language, institutions, in the very ideas we consider normal. We no longer need chains, because we police ourselves. We smile at the cameras. We censor our thoughts. We call it politeness, professionalism, progress. But Nietzsche pierced even deeper. He saw a world where morality itself had been manipulated, where we obeyed not because of law, but because of guilt, shame, the quiet death of the will. And still, we think we are free. Look around you. You're told you have choice, but every path was paved before you got here. Your anger is monetized. Your rebellion is curated. Your freedom is filtered by design. So here's the real question. If everything you believe was shaped by someone else, what part of you is truly yours? Because you were born into a contract you never read, a silent agreement that still shapes your every move. But you don't have to die under its terms. The system depends on your silence, but your silence is a choice. So speak, break a rule, tear the page, write a new contract, your own. Because true freedom isn't given, it's claimed. You were never meant to obey without question. You were never meant to fit a mold that shrinks your mind and silences your voice. The system doesn't collapse when you scream. It collapses when you whisper, no. Break one rule today, not for rebellion, but for remembrance. To remember that you're still alive, still thinking, still free, because the cage doesn't warn you before it locks. And by the time you notice the door is closed, it's already too late. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to drop a comment below and share your opinions. We read every single one. Thanks for watching.